Hi everybody, I just wanted to share with you today why I am wearing red for Ed. Um, I have heard a lot of people's stories and I think I have very similar stories, but I also wanted to say it's not just about the pay, it's not just about those sorts of things, it's also about our students. So I wear red for Ed because I was a special educator for 21 years. At the end of my 21 years, I made $48,000, and I was all but dissertation on my doctorate, and I got over as far as I could because our scales were all frozen. So when I started with what I thought was a decent salary for the time, and also with the promise of being able to move over and down on the scale and to be able to max out at a decent amount, stay there for the length of my career. As a special educator, I was required not only to be highly qualified in my subject matter that I taught, I could only teach areas that I was highly qualified in or had advanced training in or met a certain number of conditions in. So I couldn't teach something that I didn't have the training for. But in addition to that, as a special educator, I had paperwork that was legal documents, legal federal documents. I had to collaborate with my peers, not only on curriculum and things like that, but also on all of the special education paperwork, the IEPs, the progress notes. People weren't, and working in a school, people are busy. So sometimes you have to go seek those people out. So not only did I get the same amount of planning time as everyone else, no extra planning time, but I also was required to not just spend it doing lesson plans, which had to be the same as my peers' lesson plans, but I also had to spend time writing IEPs, holding meetings at times that were amenable to parents and to my peers, tracking down my peers if they needed, my colleagues if they needed to be in meetings, tracking them down if I needed information on how a student did. At one time, I had 72 students on my caseload at the elementary school, and 72 students that I was writing IEPs for every single year and doing quarterly progress reports on, in addition to teaching them in my classroom. And of course, I had the same duties as everyone else because I was part of our school community. So I would have lunch duty or before school duty or after school duty. And a common thread is that a lot of people think special ed teachers make more money, but that is not true. Not true at all. We make the same amount of money as any other type of teacher, and all teachers should make the same amount of money. I agree. So I don't have any issue with that. So I'm not saying we're special in any way just because of the population that we serve. We just have a little higher level of accountability, paperwork wise, legal wise. If we did something wrong, we could be not only in trouble with our district or say our supervisors, but we could be in trouble with the federal government, with the state government, and it could affect the funds that trickle into the state. So there was a real high level of anxiety about making sure all of our ducks in a row and the paperwork was proper and all of that. I think more funding needs to be in this state because our students deserve it. They deserve a teacher who is not going from all directions looking for people to help her or looking for people to sign some paperwork when that teacher should be focusing on what those students need. And there is no legal cap for how many special educations or students with special needs you can have in your classroom or on your caseload. There's no legal cap. So if a district feels like constrained budgetary wise, you may end up with a class full of 28 students who have all different special needs, and you are required to meet those needs on top of teaching the grade level appropriate curriculum. Time is very, very short. You don't have enough time. And for all of those people who are like, well, teachers only teach, 8, 9 months a year, and they get spring break and they get Christmas break. That is true that we do get breaks. We don't get paid for those breaks. People think they're all just paid holidays, but that's not how it works. And additionally, spending 70 hours a week or more sometimes at school and needing to do a second job, all of those hours work out. And I always worked in the summer as well. When I was a single mom, I had 4 children, had gone recently through a divorce towards the later part of my career, and I was unable to pay the $900 a month for my kids to be on my insurance, which in the divorce decree, they were to be on my insurance. And I was unable to do that. So one of my children was actually received access, and the other 3 were on something called Kids Care, which is a type of access in Arizona. That was the only way that I could get medical insurance for them, because I could not afford the $900 a month for my benefits, which were not even all that great. My benefits weren't that great. I mean, I was paying a lot of money for medical care, for medications, and then for some odd reason, sometimes in July, when our new fiscal year started, they would go back to zero for your deductible. And then in January, when the new year started, we went back to zero for the deductible. And I never really understood that. Probably should have figured out what that was all about, but that was just for my insurance. For my kids, it was much more beneficial for me to be on the state insurance. And for my youngest, I couldn't even afford daycare for him until I was able to qualify based on need for a grant for him to go to a preschool. So, and aside from all that, I spent a lot of time away from my kids because I really did need to get a lot of work done. So working on Saturday and Sunday, that was very common, especially in the last few years of my job. And I, took on a lot of other roles that were unpaid because they were needed, they were necessary. So I think that when you have good teachers, when you have people who are passionate about students, who know their stuff, and who really want to be the best that they can be, it's super important that these people are paid for their degree, their skill level, their expertise, and their passion. It is, people will say, well, you knew what you were getting into. Well, that is true to some extent, but not in Arizona. In Arizona, I didn't know what I was getting into. I've lived here my whole life except for 1 year. And my family's all here, and people will say, well, then just move. Well, that doesn't solve the problem for our kids. Our kids, need professionals who are paid as professionals. So when I did start teaching in Arizona, the pay looked great towards the end. But then for 10 years, I was frozen, given furlough days. We even at one point decreased the number of days in the school year, which of course decreased our pay. Because we were a district that exceeded the number of days that were federally required or state required for education. So, in Arizona, I didn't know that at my 21st year, I would barely be making more, despite the fact that I had gotten a master's degree, gotten a doctorate, almost completed, and, been there and stayed true to that district and not been one of those people that hopped around or whatever. So I believe in my 21st year, I was on what they called step 5, I think, which is equivalent to being there for 5 years, because we were frozen on steps and I was not allowed to move over the pay scale with the amount of education that I had. That just wasn't an option here in Arizona because of the pay. So given inflation and all the other stuff that went up, when our pay was frozen, that's a pay decrease. Then when we actually got decreases, that was a double slap in the face. Like, not only are we not going to pay you just even a cost of living increase, but we're taking money away from you. Next year, your contract is going to be lower than it is this year. And because you're a teacher and because you care about the kids and because you didn't get into it for pay, you're just going to sign it and go with it. So I think people have done that for too long, and it's gotten to the point where action needs to happen. And it's not for the teachers, it's for the kids. Teachers do need to be paid as professionals because we are professionals, and because only when we are given that level of respect and a manageable caseload and the ability to really dive deep and help these students and find the things that are going to work for them and to make them be the best they can be. We cannot do that when we are in all different directions, working nights, working weekends, at other jobs that pay better or that pay in addition to that, so that we can spend money in our classrooms to get the students the things that they need. And so I just wanted to go on and say why I am Red for Ed and give you a little bit of background on my story. I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Have a great day.